Hi, Mary Kate, it's Ryan. You're on mute.
Let's try this again. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Fabulous. Thank you. It's working. We just needed a minute to give technology its time to do its thing. So welcome. Thank you so much. It's 12:03. Thanks for giving us the grace to get our technology up and started. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Cradle-to-Career Data and Tools Ad Hoc Committee for Proposal Prioritization meeting that will get started here right now. So my name is Mary Kate Jones. My title is Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships here at Cradle-to-Career. Super happy to be the facilitator for this meeting today. And as a reminder, the meeting will be run in accordance with Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act as required by law. We hope to end around 2 p.m. today. There's a lot in front of us, a lot of discussion that members will engage in today. So I'd like to welcome members of this ad hoc committee who are with us. So members Borgen, Faust, Norris, and Fong, who, if they haven't joined us, hopefully they will. They are all participating remotely today, as indicated on the agenda. So before we begin, just a small note to members. As a reminder, we had a practice run of this on July 10. Please ensure that your cameras remain on throughout the duration of this meeting. Again, we need that to be in compliance with Bagley-Keene. So thank you so much for your help with that. On this next slide here, we're going to take a look at the agenda and what's in front of us. So the purpose of today's meeting is to publicly discuss the recommendations received from members of the Data and Tools Advisory Board and prioritize the top 3 proposals and then have members provide the reasoning for those top 3 proposals. So during today's meeting, the ad hoc committee will select up to 2 members to work offline to draft a report based off of the deliberation that will take place here today. As I mentioned, there's a lot to talk through, and members will have a very healthy dialogue, and then that will all be transmitted into that report that up to 2 members will write. The draft report will be reviewed, deliberated, and revised as needed, and approved by the ad hoc committee at the second meeting, which is scheduled on August 20th. So I'd like to take a moment to thank all members of the public, as well as the Data and Tools Advisory Board members who submitted proposals this year. If folks recall, it's the first time that we opened public proposals. We got 5 in. And then we received 6 Data and Tools Advisory Board member proposals. So a lot's happening. We appreciate everyone's contributions, dedication, and the innovative ideas that have come through this process. So before we dig in today's work, I wanted to just take a look at what lies in front of us. In total, there's 7 items on today's agenda. Our agenda, as a reminder, it's posted on the C2C website. It does note which agenda items we will be accepting public comment on today. Members will be voting on 1 agenda item, and we will open it up for public comment a total of 3 times. It's also important to note that we may be shortening the speaking times for public comment, depending on the number of speakers we have. And we'll walk through that when we get to public comment session. So thank you all for your participation here today. What I'd like to do next is establish a quorum. So fabulous, get that next slide going, and I will pass it over to Stephanie Gutierrez-Valdez, who will take us through that.
Hello. Member Borgen?
Present.
Member Faust?
Present.
Member Norris?
Present.
Member Fong?
Present.
4 members present, we have a quorum.
Fantastic. Thank you, members. I'd like to call this meeting to order here at 12:07 p.m. With our quorum established. So we're now going to move on to agenda item 2, which is the overview and layout of the ad hoc committee. And we're going to take a look at key milestones for the committee, and I will be the one presenting this agenda item. So I don't want to take up too much time here because we have so much in front of us. But if members, as well as folks in the public, want to follow along with what I'm going to be presenting on, there is a staff report for this agenda item, so please feel free to access that on the C2C website. As I just noted, we're going to walk through the layout of this committee. In particular, we're going to review the key components of the proposal prioritization process and talk about these key milestones. So let's take a look at the next slide. As members recall from the Data and Tools Advisory Board, the joint meeting that we just had on the 10th, members may remember that they approved the formation of the Data and Tools Advisory Board Ad Hoc Committee for proposal prioritization. And as I just mentioned, this just happened on July 10th, so 21 days ago. We're moving fast. And so what will happen today, what happened at that meeting is that Data and Tools members approved the charter, and that's seen here in the graphic. And the charter outlines the scope of work, as well as the activities, and then the proposed schedule for this ad hoc committee, which we've just mentioned there's going to be 2 meetings. Let's take a look at meeting 1, which is today. So today, what members are going to be doing, or I guess I should start what's already happened prior to this meeting. So on July 24th, Data and Tools member proposal submissions, that window closed. Again, that was on July 24th. And prior to today's meeting, members should have reviewed all the proposals submitted by members and should have come prepared to this meeting to discuss the recommendations received. So our next agenda item, members will have the opportunity to deliberate on the prioritization of the top 3 proposals. As a reminder, I've mentioned we received 6 member proposals in total. So you'll talk about what the top 3 from those 6 should be. Before we conclude today's meeting, 2 folks again will be delegated to work offline to draft that report based off of today's discussions. And I know I've said some of these thoughts already, but we're just going to kind of keep thinking about the process because this is new for all of us. So it's really important that we're all really clear. Now for meeting 2, that's going to happen on August 20th. And what's going to happen between here today on August 31st and the second meeting on August 20th is those 2 folks that were delegated to work offline will draft the report. Then on August 20th, the committee will convene again, and it will be their second meeting. And at this meeting, members will have the opportunity to review the draft report, make any necessary revisions, and ideally approve that report. What will then happen is that report will be shared with Data and Tools Advisory Board members, and it will be posted on the C2C website as the official report of the ad hoc committee. And then when members go through that prioritization process, they can refer to the report as a resource for them. Okay, let's take a look at these key milestones. So, as specified in the charter, the final report will be due to the office on August 23rd. That will be the final report, again approved hopefully on the 20th. The office will share it with members of Data and Tools. Again, that pre-meeting survey that I just referred to, and that will be shared with advisory board members on August 26th. So you'll notice it's pretty tight timelines to get all these pieces of the puzzle coming together. And then that pre-meeting survey, that prioritization, is going to be due from all Data and Tools members by September 9th. The office will then take a look at the results of those pre-meeting surveys and share the top 3 proposals that were prioritized by all Data and Tools members, and that will happen before September 17th. So should the Data and Tools Advisory Board members wish to make any amendments on those top 3 proposals that emerge, there's an amendment window. So remember, this is a new change that we're implementing this year. Members will have to use that amendment form, and that can be found on the advisory board proposal page, which is on the C2C website. And those amendments to the proposals will be due by members or from members by September 23rd. So the top 3 proposals will be presented at the Data and Tools Advisory Board fall meeting, which will occur on October 1st. And then at that meeting, members will have the opportunity to decide whether the proposal should advance to a feasibility study. Okay, so that was a large run through of the process. Hopefully these slides were helpful to help and the staff report were helpful for all folks to follow along. That concludes my presentation. Before we wrap this whole thing up, I want to ask, are there any member questions or comments? I'm happy to defer to you at this time. If you have anything, feel free to raise your hand. If not, we can keep going and move to the next agenda item. And I'm not seeing any hands raised, so love it. I'll take that as a very clear presentation. And we can happily move on to agenda item 3. So what we'll be discussing right now is I'll just do a quick overview and then open it up to members for their discussion on the prioritization of the data and tools member proposals. Once we get through that deliberation, we'll open it up for public comment. There was a staff report that was drafted for this agenda item, so members of the public and my advisory board members here of the ad hoc committee, please feel free to refer to that. Again, this is going to be a high-level overview of the process. We're going to touch upon that proposal rubric since it's super important, and we're going to have a brief description of the guidelines for the draft report since that's an outcome of this meeting as well. As I've mentioned, after my presentation, we'll open it up for member discussion and deliberation, and then y'all will have the floor. Okay, so the next slide, please. So as I have said, beginning this year, members of the public were able to submit proposals. That's something new that we did. The Data and Tools Advisory Board members were therefore afforded the opportunity to sponsor a public proposal. They were also afforded the opportunity to revive a proposal that wasn't selected last year. There were a total of 4 that could have been chosen from, or members could have submitted their own idea. And so what was actually submitted, we got a total of 6 submissions. It was kind of a speckling. We did receive sponsorship of a public proposal, and we did see another member choose to sponsor a member's idea from last year. So as a reminder today, our discussion will just really look at these 6 proposals that came from members. We're not going to take a look at all proposals that are up in the archive. It's just going to be what's here in front of us, these 6 proposals. So, I also want to share these proposals. They're on our website. They are attached to the staff report. And if folks notice behind the staff report, there's also a voting sheet. And this is a document from the office that provides background information to support the prioritization of potential new data points for the C2C data system for the P20W data set. So staff with the office worked with advisory board members who submitted proposals to provide greater specificity about the suggested item. So when members are discussing the proposals, they can feel free to take into consideration this document and utilize it as a resource to complete your prioritization. And for members following along of the public, again, this is all noted in the staff report. So you'll notice a proposal followed by the voting sheet. All right, on the next slide, we're going to take a look at that rubric. Now, I've already mentioned that this rubric is really important. So prior to this meeting, members should have reviewed all proposals as we've mentioned, and come prepared with their ideal prioritization and reasoning. Now, something that I would really like to focus ad hoc members' attention to is this rubric. So as y'all are conversing and deliberating today, and you're going to prioritize your top 3. It's really important that we refer back to this rubric for reasoning. Because when we get to the more advanced stage of this process, you're going to lean on this rubric to prioritize again. So it would make sense if justification in your report pulls from things evidenced in this rubric, which is why I'm taking a moment to remind you that it's here and to talk through it. This is also in the staff report. So again, that clear reasoning and justification, pulling on the rubric will be really important today. You'll notice that the rubric, this was brought in front of you in March. There's 4 areas of it: impact and benefit, mission and vision, authority, and likelihood of success. So this will be a familiar resource to all data and tools members. Okay. The next thing we're going to take a look at just real quick is that draft report. So as I've mentioned, this is the first time we have this committee. So this is new territory for all of us. So the office thought that it might be helpful to stand up a sample draft report just to give this process some structure. So again, reminding the 4 of you that you'll have to select 2 of you to write this report. And then this just provides, again, some structure. So just voicing over what it says, the first paragraph could write, draft your own, but a model that you could follow is that's the introduction, include the authority of the ad hoc committee, the reason for the report, overview of the number of proposals, and you can incorporate the proposals. Ideally, the introduction would feature a strong thesis statement, right? So going back to our grammar school days, this is a very traditional model. Paragraph 1 talking about prioritization number 1, followed by your justification. Paragraph 2, whatever that second proposal prioritization would be, as well as justification. And then paragraph 3, proposal 3, that justification. Again, ideally, strongly leaning on the rubric for justification, and then a concluding paragraph. As a reminder, the office would like this report back from those 2 members on the 12th. And the reason why we're asking it back on the 12th is to provide the other committee members a chance to look at it in preparation for our meeting on the 20th. All right. So that concludes my presentation. There's a draft motion, which is also listed on the staff report. I just want to voice it over here and now. But again, member deliberation is going to need to happen. But ideally, by the end of the conversation, you all will move to a place where this motion can be utilized, moving to identify those top 3 proposals and the related reasoning as discussed in the meeting, and delegating the 2 members of the ad hoc committee to work offline to draft a report reflecting the ad hoc committee's proposal prioritization and providing an explanation behind the prioritization. So that's the motion. I'm going to now hand it over to members. I suppose a question that I have, but it can be answered by the end of our discussion, would be, are there 2 eager members that know right away that they'd love to draft the report? And maybe we need a little bit more time, and that's okay. Okay, so what I'm hearing is we'll come back to who wants to draft it, but that's the conclusion of my presentation. And now what we'll do is we'll go into member questions and comments. Really, this is your deliberation section. So if y'all want to raise hands, I'm happy to kind of facilitate it. But this is really now your meeting, and you can speak and share, and we'll want to start circling in on what those top 3 priorities and reasonings are. So I'm happy to open it up to members. Okay, I see Member Borgen's hand.
Thank you. Just a quick question. If we don't have a consensus around the top 3 priorities, would that be an okay decision as well? Move forward and not have a full consensus around that?
That's a great question. And legal, if you want to help provide any thoughts there, to ground us.
So, I mean, the goal should be right now to have a top 3 proposals. If we have like a tie or something like that, we can discuss how we'd prioritize that. But I think let's see what happens through the prioritization process before we try to come up with a alternative if we need one.
Helpful question. Okay. And then I see Member Norris's hand, please.
Yeah, I just have a question for clarification also. Would you mind quickly sharing the rubric again on the screen? I just wanted to make sure I picked up the correct rubric from the materials.
Yeah, perfect. And if the rubric would be helpful to have displayed during the entire conversation, we can happily leave it up. I believe it's attachment N in your materials, should that be helpful. There it is.
And I will look for it in attachment 10.
Yeah, Member Fong, please.
Just for a process question, do we go through proposal by proposal from top to bottom, or can it be raised like by any member in whatever order, whatever question?
Yeah, so this is your session. We just need to ideally reach consensus before 2 p.m. So if y'all want to go through all 6 proposals, that's something that you can do. It's member deliberation. It's your discussion time. So if one member wants to start that conversation going through one proposal and you go through all 6, great. Or if a member wants to share which top 3 spoke to them, you know, this is a very malleable model we have here. Member Borgen, I saw your hand first.
Thank you, Mary Kate. I'll just go ahead and start. I've identified 3 proposals that ranked higher on my list, and we'll generate those 3 right now and discuss those 3 perhaps, or go further. But I've scored the leading. I just kind of have full titles. I'm sorry, what's the title of that one? The leading multilingual learners, I believe, is the title of one. The digital learners is the second. And the third is student debt. And so I've identified those 3 as the top 3. And scoring of 18, 18, and 18.
Can you, sorry, Member Borgen, can you repeat those one more time for me, please?
I think it's weaving multilingual learners, the digital learners, and then the student debt.
Perfect. Multilingual as 1, digital access as 2.
Correct.
And then number 3 being student debt. Okay, thank you for that. And then Member Norris, I saw your hand next, if you'd like to hop in, or apologies, Member Borgen, I see you are on mute, so I think you're done.
Great. Well, I'll share how I rated them also, but I have a couple of specific questions about specific proposals. And I wonder if maybe it would make, well, let me just kind of say where I ended up. I ended up with the one that was in attachment A, which is digital access to learning, the one that was in attachment G, which is student debt, and the one that was in attachment I think, which is, attachment K, which is multilingual learners. But I have a specific question about the first one, the digital access to learning, which I see Member Borgen authored, so I'm sure it would be able to answer. And I also have a specific question about the grad school completion rates, which perhaps the staff could answer if that's okay. So Member Borgen, my question on the first item, the first one is, It's just not an area that I'm not overly familiar with the K-12 area. And I was just wondering about the general availability of some of this data, and is it while I read through the notes, there were pieces around digital devices for in-class use and digital devices for at-home use. Is that information readily available in most K-12s? I know you work in a specific Department of Education, but I was just interested in hearing a little bit more about that.
Should I respond to that? Is that part of the efficacy study? And because other folks will have the opportunity to respond to their proposals, I just want to make sure.
A good question.
Around that.
Yeah, I think staff council can correct us, but I'm not seeing a correction, so I believe it's okay to answer.
Yeah, no issues. Whatever the conversation needs to happen in order for there to be a prioritization is appropriate.
Sure, great, thank you. So a lot of districts do have collect some of that data at the local level as well. Right now, I'm not sure from the state reporting side if there is a way to aggregate that, but again, I think that will come out of the efficacy study, what kind of data can be collected on that end, from my thought, and again, that's why I'm kind of putting it forward and seeing what kind of study can be done around that sets of data. For example, for funding wise, the E-rate and stuff that is collected at the national level and can be easily aggregated at the state level for LEAs as well, and that will that statewide funding or district funding for technology in the classroom, or technology, telecommunication, internet services, as well as network connectivity at the school site itself. And some of that also is because of new laws, also we provide hotspots as well for students through E-rate funding as well. That's something I put on the ballot. I would hope that would continue to be advocated for as well, collecting data statewide.
Thank you. And then if I have time for one other question related to the graduate school, which hopefully some from member Shack, but I think that somebody on the staff might be able to answer this. I noticed that the proposal explicitly talks about graduate school at the CSU and the UC, and so I believe that the proposal is really to pull that data from the CSU and the UC and not at this time to include private universities or non-public universities, which is a great place to start, I think, with the UC and the CSU. But I guess my question is, would there be any thought to including in the discussion of this, if this proposal were to go forward, to ensure that if we want to including AICCU in the discussion, so that, or the design, so that at some point in the future, the same data could be easily gathered from private universities. So that's just my question.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at data. We have some data program folks on the line that might be able to help us with it. And as you mentioned, we don't have member Shack here, unfortunately, but David Lang, any thoughts for us?
So I think it was our understanding that the intent of member Shack's proposal was to focus primarily on CSU and UCs. As Mary Kate mentioned, we do have an amendment process that's
a great point.
Can be used potentially to help clarify what these proposals can do, and I defer to our council in terms of if and when that process should be invoked.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I wouldn't be suggesting necessarily changing it because I think it's a great starting point to move forward with UC and CSU. I think perhaps if this one did move forward, to your point, David, I could propose an amendment to include the AICCU and the planning for this. That would be more my recommendation. And so if it moves forward, I would plan to do that. So thank you for that suggestion.
Wonderful. Yes.
And before we move to Member Fong, I just would like to just make a comment that the quality of the proposals was really, they were all excellent proposals. I don't know how we're going to choose three. So the quality and the value for each of these proposals, I just think it just reflects the value of the work that C2C offers to the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Member Fong, please.
Yes, I definitely want to agree with Member Norris. The quality of proposals makes it rather difficult to choose just three. I did want to build actually on what Member Norris was suggesting in Oliver Shack's proposal around graduate school study. I think not to like have to pitch mine, but for it makes it really awkward for me actually. But in the one that I proposed around the credit-bearing course, student outcomes, and then the NACE first destination survey, within the first destination survey actually does include graduate study and fields of study in that survey, and seeing that there are already public institutions like the CSUs and the universities and public entity and private universities that already have a survey or administer this survey, I could see there be an amendment to include not amendment to Oliver Shack's, but could find a way that we are actually killing two birds with one stone through this one proposal for the internships and the job outcomes, just because of that first destination survey. And from what I understand in the data set, we do collect, employment outcome based on Social Security numbers. However, we aren't collecting internship data, which we think is like a key indicator for success for graduate school and for career outcomes. And two, I think that, again, it would supplement the data collection from the Office of Unemployment. And then my second comment is actually around the digital learning access piece. There's no response.
Can I
to that, so
interrupt
just kind of like,
Diana? I think
Yeah.
we're only getting about half of your words. It might help if you turn off your camera. Your bandwidth might be a little bit better then. I recognize that you're supposed to keep it on, but I'll just note that we're having technical difficulties. So we're asking Diana to turn off her camera and see if that helps.
Oh, I am so sorry, y'all. I am traveling. Can y'all hear me now?
Much better.
Ah, okay.
So
So I just want
go back.
Oh my
If you
how
could go
far do I
back
need
to, we heard stuff about internships, but there was the last section of it we didn't hear. I know you were moving on to your next point, but if you could repeat as best you could your last point, that was a bit choppy.
Yes. So the one data set that we're not collecting is on internships. And then with the first destination survey, I know that Cradle-to-Career right now is collecting data on any student who has Social Security numbers from the Office of Unemployment, what their career outcomes are. So doing this first destination survey collection is supplemental to that data that we're already collecting and would be inclusive of any student who doesn't have a Social Security number, which I thought would be really beneficial. And it would also include graduate study as well, graduate school as well. Was that clear? Y'all heard me? Okay, good. Phew. And then I did actually have a question around the the digital access to learning, I again thought that was really incredible and interesting, but I was wondering in this like post-COVID world, are we just making it, are we assuming that school districts have reverted back and students don't no longer have access to digital access? That was one of the questions that I have coming out of that. I was just like, I don't know. And maybe that's an assumption that I'm making, which makes it really interesting, but I'm not sure, Member Borgen, if you could speak to kind of the reasons why you thought it would be really impactful to have that data.
Absolutely. I think it's a few different things, especially at the elementary level, we are seeing a revert back to limited screen time, limited access at some school sites in my experience in K-12. I think there was a abundant overuse of technology that was not supported. And so because of that, we're seeing a lot of concerns both at the home level as well as in the classroom level that things didn't work out as best they could during distance learning time. But you're also seeing different teachers, and you're seeing a divide because you also see teachers who utilize that time to access technology and transform their classroom practices because of that. So it is a big mix. Secondarily, I think geographically across the state of California is very diverse, and in different areas there's different internet speeds and access levels. And what you can do with a fiber connection is a lot more than you can do with a hotspot 3G, 4G connection. And access to course materials and multimedia is very diverse, and there's for learning, and access to those tools are efficient for learning, as research shows. But because of connection speeds and connect availability of those connection speeds in different geographical areas, access to learning materials may be diverse in different ways.
Interesting. I think that I think that is interesting and important. I would love for that to extend not just to K through 12, but actually truly P through 16, because I think students in higher education are experiencing those same things, living at home, particularly in Cal States, where they're commuting to and from home. However, I was just thinking about the impact and like the end user. If a parent were to look or use the data dashboard and the tools, how would that impact their decision, if any, on any of the decisions that they would make about a quality education? Or do you see that end user being more researchers and practitioners using that data or that dashboard, that data set on our dashboard?
I think the research question around how does academic achievement and student success relate to that, I don't think there's been enough research around that, and this gives the opportunity to correlate those two things. And that was the vision around that research question. So I think to answer your question, I think the ability for us to utilize this data and only show is there correlation with families and parents around the transparency in that, but also from a research perspective to showcase that, and to also, and then the third thing, to highlight, where there is a digital divide amongst our schools, regions, and areas in California, educational environments at the P16 level. Right, you go to one community college or another, there might be a lot different use of technology in those two. Same thing with CSU. So is there an equity gap around access to those tools and resources because of that? Even though they might have similar programs of study, there might be very, very different access to those tools, which might ultimately convey different learning outcomes and success rates for careers, those students.
Thank you for sharing that.
Member Faust.
Thank you. That was kind of my question as well, with regard to the digital access to learning. It was this question for me of being able to understand availability of this type of technology in order to facilitate learning, and then being able then to relate that to student outcomes. For me, at least in my experience, I felt like what we really wanted to capture was access. Like, were they actually able to use the technology and the internet in order to facilitate this outcome. However, just because my student has a laptop doesn't mean it's good and it can be used, so I think that there were a lot of like very hyper local questions for the proposal that I felt like it was like we needed more information, at that very local level in order to really answer those questions of access, right? Which I think is really fascinating. So that was my only, kind of thought about the that particular proposal. With regard, that probably would have made it into my top three, and I can be persuaded to include it there. The only other two, actually, that I highlighted were the weaving disaggregated multilingual learning data into C2C, because we did actually have that very local individual level data that then you can start to track. And that probably shows my individual bias when it comes to making decisions about the priorities. It's, one of the great values of the C2C. I see it as an individual level linked in integrated data set, right? Where you're really able to chart students over time and then be able to understand the contextual factors that are influencing them as they get to their outcomes. And so for me, that weaving disaggregated multilingual learning, I was like, okay, like we have the information, it's already being collected. It could be at an individual level, tracked through time in order to kind of account for some of the other variables that we would be interested in taking into account when we're trying to understand how to inform those programs and policies. So that one made it for me. And then also the student debt. Again, Member Norris, to your points about availability of the entire kind of landscape or population. That's my other bias, is I would really like for all of the data requests that come through and to be presented on the site as public information to be about the entire population of students rather than particular, like these are just for UC kids and these are, despite that, I think that it's really fantastic, and being able then to start to, at an individual level, like chart it back and see how kids progress, and then also, what that means in terms of their future earnings and debt burden. So those two were the ones that stood out for me. And yeah, just kind of wanted to talk through my reasoning behind them.
Thank you. I saw Member Norris's hand next.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to Member Faust's comments on the student debt, and also to correct one thing I said earlier. I too am have student debt as one of my first choices, and I do want to say that while it would my earlier comment about with the graduate studies want to include more than UC and CSU would be ideal. I'm a realist. I've worked in this field for a long time, so I know sometimes we take it in small steps, and I'm completely supportive of something that moves us along. There are a lot of students in the UC and the CSU, and we can learn a lot from those pieces. So I want to also note my support of the student debt. It's clearly a major issue for parents. It's a major issue for all universities, and it was my one of my top three. I did, however, want to note that when I did my rubric, if you will, I indicated that the digital learning was in the top three, and it is, but I also have that sort of tied with child savings account data, which I think, the financial pieces around education, I think, are really critical. So I just wanted to point that out because I hadn't mentioned that. But, I want to express my support again for the student debt one. I think it's well written, well researched, and well ready to go.
Thank you. The next hand I saw was Member Fong's.
Yes, definitely agree with member Norris on the student debt, and that one I think is going to be really my top three as particularly interesting. I think again, coupled with that is not only are we seeing the student debt, but really student outcomes and how those balance each other out. Because we could have one set of data, but without comparing it to students' earnings at the end, I just feel like it's really hard for researchers to calculate return on investment in that. But I think it would be really interesting for not just researchers, but users like parents and students as well. And I felt like it was more applicable to families looking at the dashboard. The child savings one, again, know that that one is mine, but I just wanted to put a little voice around it. That one in particular, I thought was such an interesting one because we have a clear cohort of students who we can now follow at the beginning stages of them having a savings account, which is particularly unique compared to many of the other data points. I think this is like a real instituted program. It happened with the state. There's a lot of like alignment around policy around it. Yeah, those were all my points.
Member Borgen?
Thank you. A few things. A member filed your question about access to technology. That's a very good one. They can get a laptop if they don't know how to do it, use it, or if there's no training for the teachers or staff, then it's going to kind of go to the wayside. Where is the efficacy of the support structure and building capacity and knowledge with pedagogy and support structures to utilize the tools and materials? And so you'll see a data point that in there as well, as far as training and support staff supporting IT and technology education as well, to correlate with that data. That's a very important one to me because that's all I do is professional development and focus on supporting teachers and building their capacity to transform their practices. And so that's huge around that as well. It's not just the access, it's actually the training and support as well. It sounds like weaving multilingual support and student debt, though 3 out of 4 of us, at least I heard as the top 3, so I'd like to formally move those forward. It sounds like also digital learning was really supported too. I'm going to be somewhat biased on my piece because of my proposal, but I think it's a value. There's nothing around digital technology or tools at all right now in C2C, so it's an opportunity to bring that forward to that to the system. The savings account one I think is fabulous. I think we're still early in that program. CalKids, for example, just launched in 2022. Our youngest students who have savings accounts are what, 2 or 3 years old by now. And so I think I'm not sure if we do anything with that data at this point in time. Maybe later on, moving that forward might be of value. But I think right now in the next 5 years, I'm not sure if we're going to get any value in actually seeing longitudinal value in that data right now.
Oh, thank you for that, Member Borgen. That was beautiful. I didn't want to rush anything, but was hearing and calculating similarly. So I suppose at time check, it's 12:51. So we have about an hour and 9 minutes left of the meeting officially, but still needing to take, public comment. That's the next public item, followed by future agenda items. So we should reserve at least 10 minutes at the end of the meeting for that. So let's say we have about an hour left for deliberation. Would members at this time want to start, calling out or circling in on this is number 1, this is number 2? It does seem like there's a bit of consensus around 2 at the very least. And then my recommendation would be as well, if you're going to call out, this is our number 1, also just having a concrete idea around why it's number 1. Because that's going to, be very helpful for whomever the 1 or 2 people writing that report. That will be very helpful for them. So that would be my thoughts here at this time for members. Member Borgen, I saw your hand. We'll do Borgen and then Norris. Or straight to Member Norris. Fabulous.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree. I think that's a good approach. And I want to echo what I think I heard you say and what I heard Member Borgen say, that I think we've heard that the student debt and multilingual learners seem to be at the top. And perhaps one thing we could do is maybe go through those. If we're all hearing it the same way, maybe we could talk about why those two are at the top and then move on to the third one. But perhaps that's what I'm hearing too.
So a quick thought. Y'all are prioritizing, right? So you're saying these could be our top three. If you wanted to be a tad more specific, because remember, down the line, you as members will need to vote, or excuse me, prioritize, and that prioritization, you will have to say 1, 2, 3. So if you wanted to structure the model that way, that's available to you, or you can also just say vaguely top 3. So in case that's a helpful reminder to folks. Member Borgen.
So I want to just kind of put it on the table for the 4 of us, I guess. Can we agree to the top 3 and then we can deliberate which ones rank first, second, third, or the leaving the learners, student debt, and digital learning? So it's question 4.
Member Norris.
I just want to say I'm sort of struggling to hear Member Borgen exactly. So I'm hopeful that maybe he could repeat what he said, because it's important for us to hear it correctly.
Please.
All right, let me try this again. So I'm thinking we can all agree on at least the top 3 and then deliberate on ranking those top 3. And so I'm putting on the table here, leading multilingual learners, student debt, and digital learning.
I agree with that.
I'm comfortable with that.
I think that's majority, y'all. So doesn't really matter. I think I definitely still want to push for some amendments if we are going to move with digital learning to be inclusive of the 16, the higher education, if we are going to move in that direction.
Agreed. There are some metrics. I didn't know all of them for higher learning, but I did put a few there as far as actually connectivity of specific universities. So that's actually already on there. I think there's some more things that can be potentially added, recommended through the efficacy study, perhaps, if it does move forward. David, I guess.
Okay, so I don't need to rush us, but I heard 3 of 4. Member Fong, would you like to offer an alternative?
My alternate, obviously, I would have done the internship in first destination survey 1, the multilingual one, as well as the student debt. That's how I would have voted.
Okay, so the difference between adding or removing digital and adding internships. If I tracked.
Internships and first destination, yes.
Okay. Reactions from committee members. Or wanting to keep the original slate.
So I vote to keep the original slate of digital access to learning, the student debt, and weaving disaggregated multilingual learners. Um, Mostly because of the availability of data. As I mentioned before, there is a question in my mind of the digital access to learning and how local we would be able to get in order to understand be able to answer the questions that we really want to be able to answer. But I am for having it go through the feasibility process and see, what we would be able to collect, what's there. But I worry a little about the internship and first destination survey data for two reasons. Number one is the availability of that data, right? So not currently collected or sent to and aggregated at a place where we would be able to access that. And also for the the population, right? Where when I'm hearing kind of the survey data part of that, I may be mistaken. So correct me if I'm wrong. But when I'm hearing that is I'm hearing samples or self-report rather than administrative kind of level data that would just automatically flow to a destination. So, in my orientation is always toward the latter rather than having a sample or a survey-based administrative, data collection mechanism. So that probably would be my only concern about that. But I think that the idea and the concept is really great. So it's not a content issue at all.
Slate. My concern with the internship one is it's a very small subset that I'm not sure how scalable it would truly be at this point. I think it's a great direction we want to go. Again, I think it's a very small subset.
I just wanted to say that there are many schools who do collect internship data as well as the first destination outcomes. Again, happy to move off of this and move forward into digital access. But I think that's actually one of the gaps, the equity gaps within education, is the fact that there is no accountability to tracking internships at the institution level or not tracking first destination surveys at 100%. And this is why students are incurring debt and actually questioning the return on investment of education right now. And if we don't have that data readily available, if we're not asking that data of the institution, then I feel that it is a continuous cycle of inequity. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so digesting out loud, I'm hearing that we've narrowed in on a 3. Is the next step that we'd like to take assigning a priority 1, 2, and 3 amongst the top 3? Or discussing reasoning and then giving priority? Yeah, please, Member Norris.
I thanks for phrasing it that way. I'd be in favor of discussing reasoning. I don't know. I'm going to ask you again to help me make sure I understand if we have to prioritize them or if we have to say here are the top 3 that we recommend, given that the advisory board is going to go through a process also.
Mary Kate, do you recall what the charter says? Because I just don't remember what they were tasked for. Was it identifying the top 3 or was it identifying the top 3, prioritizing and providing reasoning? I know providing reasoning and identifying the top 3 was part of it. I just can't remember if it was specific to having a prioritization or not.
Give me one moment to confirm. So I think reasoning can still happen. while we investigate this in the background. Does that work for folks? And then we can circle back. Okay, Member Fong, I see your hand.
Sorry, similar question, which was, do we have to prioritize?
So I'm looking at the charter. It says that the ad hoc for proposal prioritization shall assist the DTAB by convening in public meetings to discuss and draft a report with a top 3 recommended prioritization of the proposals submitted by DTAB. I'm gonna see if there's top 3 prioritization. So I would say it's somewhat ambiguous as to whether or not there needs to be a specific order. It says prioritizing the top 3. I think it's probably within ad hoc committee members like purview to decide if that means you need to have a 1, 2, 3, or if you're just saying these are the top 3. So I can't give you like a cut and dry legal answer. I'm looking at the charter and it can be interpreted both ways.
Member Morgan. Thank you, Member Julia Blair.
Thank you. So I want to commend this ad hoc committee for doing this work, having this discussion. I think it's a lot of work, and I think going into specifics 1, 2, 3 is a little bit too much minutia, and I think giving us the top 3 priorities is enough, in my recommendation.
I'm seeing nodding heads.
Mary Kate, if it's helpful for you, I don't think we really need to change your suggested motion because it's sort of written the same way as the charter. And we can explain in the staff memo when it comes back to the committee that there's no specific order, or we can just say we did it in alphabetical order, whatever we want to do. I was just looking at the motion and I just wanted to put that out there for members and for you, Mary Kate.
Okay, so that, and I also hear a proposed solution. So would members of the committee be okay with having a top 3 priority and rolling out that top 3 in alpha order, no specific ranking being given to what is number 1, number 2, number 3, but a top 3 package? I see.
I support that.
Consensus. Fabulous. Okay, great. So we have a top 3. So we could just talk about reasoning and we could figure out who wants to write this report. So 2 more obstacles in front of us, but we're almost there. Okay, so if we're going in alpha order, do we want to talk through digital first? Because that alphabetically is first.
And we want to provide our reasoning outside of the reasoning that was already provided within the proposal. Or could we use the reasoning in the proposal?
Right, you're trying to provide your reasoning for why you picked these 3 out of all of the proposals.
Correct.
I would say just one thing. I mean, I went to the proposal, so again, all of my reasoning was in there, but I think, I'm not sure if this is in there or not. I'm looking at it right now. The implication of alignment to a statewide digital equity plan that just came out is I think is very important to show the alignment of focus of digital equity across California. And number 2, I think there is no metrics around technology use, digital access, or digital equity at all currently in C2C, and this gives the opportunity to potentially provide some of those data points where I see gaps because there's nothing around those specific metrics within C2C.
Thank you. Member North?
I would say reading this one and particularly following today's discussion, I also do think that this one is quite actionable, it's quite achievable, and that the data would be valuable in terms of research and planning for the future. So I just wanted to say this one came across to me as something that would be it aligns well and is achievable.
Member Fong. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, one of the reasonings again is around the Member Faust, if you were first. One of the reasonings for me is just the interest coming out of post-COVID, and assumptions being made that many students have had access, but maybe there's reduced access that we're unaware of, or people may have experienced. And so that is particularly interesting at this time when we are now more back in person.
Member Faust.
Perfect. And sorry for jumping in. I just
No,
went
please,
for
thank
it.
you.
So no, one thing that I find that's unique about this would be kind of a geographic lens. Right, like there are relatively few variables that I think could be disaggregated at a local level across California, right, and all of the counties, districts, schools. Like I think that this affords kind of a unique opportunity to look at geography and its intersection with socioeconomic status and availability of resources within those communities. So I thought that that was unique and interesting.
Wonderful. So if I'm bringing this back to the rubric, and again, I'm trying to whomever's going to write this report, because the office will not be doing so. If this is helpful to voice over, just kind of connection to the rubric, because we know that you all as members, will you be using the rubric? I heard y'all talk about the proposals relation to community affiliation. You talked about data sets, data alignment, as well as actionable experience. So digesting that, you as members, my question here is that you as members feel like this proposal hits all 4 criterion that are listed on the rubric.
Mary Kate, can I ask a process question? And I apologize that I'm airing this in a public meeting, but I think it's really important. Are you saying staff is not involved at all in writing the report, or is this report going to be, will there be staff collaborating because it's going to be presented as part of a staff report?
So the office will not be writing the report. That's why we're looking for 2 volunteers at the end of this meeting, or by the end of this meeting, to see who from this committee will be writing the report.
Okay.
The office can be available to be helpful, but which is why there was a draft report given in the resources, and this has been signaled.
Okay, great.
And in the charter.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good question. So is that also clear for members? Okay, perfect. Member Morgan, please.
Just to align to the rubric to answer your question, thank you for centering us around that. I think this expands the opportunity around disparities and allows us to identify not only gaps in socioeconomic disparities, but also geographical disparities and philosophical disparities as well. I think it really aligns to the focus of seeing longitudinal success correlating academic data to different data, in this case, digital access data and support data at the local school and university or community college level. And is really aligned to the focus of correlation, which is what C2C's charter is, and the ability to continue to aggregate and disaggregate this data with a variety of data sources provided on likelihood of success.
Any other thoughts? Okay. So I feel like if members feel comfortable, I feel like we talked through the digital access. If we want to talk through reasonings for student debt, which would be the next in order alphabetically. Member Faust.
Student debt is such a huge issue, right? And being able to understand kind of the individual debt burden and using that information also to enhance the entire integrated data set. I think it's a really great opportunity for the system as well as for advocates and researchers.
Thank you. Member Norris.
I would agree with Member Faust. I'd note also that I also think that this hits everything that we outline in the rubric. I was particularly in reviewing them. I was a lot of financial aid data already exists in the data set, and there's an element of identifying really the types of federal loans that are involved. So I feel it hits that piece of being, very actionable. I do think it is a huge issue currently. This is not necessarily reflected in the rubric, but I think there's a real a timeliness issue here, given the current situation with the federal financial aid and problems surrounding it in the current year and probably in the next couple of years, unfortunately, that this data will become more and more valuable for researchers, given the challenges with federal aid over the last, in this year and in the future.
Member Fong.
Yes, I absolutely agree with some of the policies that we're trying to push for at the state level and the federal level around doubling the Pell Grant. So student debt is definitely a hot topic. I'm particularly interested. I think what is really exciting about this data set is, one, it doesn't currently exist in our system, and that it can be broken down by race and different identity markers that would even be more valuable to multiple stakeholders using the P20 data set.
Thank you. Member Borgen, any
Can't lower my hand
adds?
for some.
Again, just I think reiterating all that was said, I think the ability also for correlating student debt to career success is going to be key in showing how student loan or lack thereof could or potentially correlate to graduation rates and successful career establishment individuals. So, that money factor of funds can reduce potentially the ability for development. So the correlation to cost of college and university and how it may affect the ability to be successful is important. Is an important function both for the public to see as well as our research team and legislators to see.
You. Okay, so do we feel like we've wrapped up reasoning for that proposal? And we can move to the last proposal, which would be weaving disaggregated multilingual learner data. Member Borgen, I see your hand.
Yeah, so I think we know and the research shows that the biggest achievement gaps for student success is multilingual learners for multilingual learners compared to their English only counterparts. And I think the ability to show us this gap longitudinally and to compare it with the K-20 level is very important to highlight and also build out case studies around successful implementation and tying it to models that do work and showing disparities in those gaps in different areas, both geographically, programmatically, and other specific areas that may affect the students' outcomes if they're a multilingual learner. So It's a very important part of California and the work we do as educators because of the high percentage of multilingual learners we do have in our state.
Other members? Member Faust, thank you.
I couldn't have said it better than Member Morgan. An additional component is me really thinking about the amount of resources and programming that goes into remediation and excelling for students that are learners, English learners. And so for me, it has direct programmatic implications. And so I think it would be very interesting. And also has the ability to have that geographic focus. So in terms of parents, right? If you're thinking about advocates, or parents who are looking at their own individual school district or school, like that could provide information for them when making decisions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Member Fong.
Yeah, I think what is incredible about this is that there's such clearly defined definitions for each group of multi-language learner. And there are true metrics to see the transition from one to the next category throughout a student's journey. That would be able, researchers and beyond can track the trajectory of a student and really follow them for a timeline. I also think that if we look at Cradle to Career as a potential model for the entire nation, just knowing that there are now other regions and states that will have like a huge influx of multi-language learners, et cetera, and that they too could then include this in as like an established or foundational data set in there. I know that's not in there, but like for future state, I think it'd be great to include already. If other states build out their own data systems.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I feel like the last thought, if a member would like to make it, just to kind of tie this conversation up with a bow, is again, I think it's helpful to relate it back to the rubric. And the folks that are writing the report are going to use the content from this meeting that y'all deliberated and agreed upon to write that report. So I'd invite a member to make a comment related to the rubric for the record, please.
Yeah, I think I would say, along with my fellow members, I think it particularly hits on the community affiliation and the data alignment areas. We've talked about that some of the data within the proposal, it talks about some of the data existing, but without all of the detail that we are now proposing. And I also agree with Member Fong that the data elements are really clearly defined, which I think specifically speaks to the actionable and the likelihood of success of this particular proposal.
Very helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so we have 3. We have clear reasoning. The one thing I can ask for again at this time before I ask for a motion are 2 volunteers. Or 1 volunteer. I think it's better to do things in pairs. But should one brave volunteer like to step forward?
Mary Kate, can you remind us the date of when this needs to be submitted again?
Ideally, the 12th of August. Your committee meeting's on the 20th, so we can post it anytime before the 20th. But the later we go past the 12th, you're just giving members less time for review. Member Borgen, please.
I'll be happy to help co-write it. Do we get any staff support on writing it, or is it just us with the fellow member?
Yeah, so the office, we're taking notes on the conversation today. So we're happy to provide those notes. I think the notes would be very helpful when writing the report. But it should come from members themselves.
Mary
And then
Kate, do we have a template or an example? I think that might be helpful for
Yeah.
members as well.
The template is provided in the public materials. Someone can correct me. I believe that is attachment N. We reviewed it today in the presentation as well.
So we can provide like a Word copy or some sort of copy of that for them to work off of.
It's already all publicly available. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Member Borgen. I heard one. Please, sorry, Member Norris.
Yeah, Member Borgen, I'd be happy to collaborate with you on this. I do want to note that I have some travel between now and then, so hopefully we can figure it out. I think it seems like the intent is to have a fairly concise report, and that we'll be able to leverage a lot of the notes that the staff will provide from this meeting. So I think between my colleague and myself, we can probably knock it out pretty quickly.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. All right, so we have two
Mary Kate,
members.
just a quick question. So this, we
Please.
don't have to publicly or anything, we can meet on our own, or what are the options?
Correct. We've intentionally limited it to 2 members so that we don't have to invoke Bagley-Keene. And that's why as a ad hoc committee, you're going to delegate that so that you're giving your authority to 2 members to do this outside of a meeting. And without volunteering any of my colleagues, I would say you can reach out to me anytime. If you have questions about the process or trying to find something, I'm happy to be a resource for you.
Great, and then you will connect Member Norris and I with email addresses as well, and connect us. And we'll do it off the record, then connect you to us.
Yes, the office will get you set up. Brilliant, perfect. So I believe we're ready for a motion. So if we want to actually put the slide deck back up, sorry, General Counsel, did you have another
Yes,
thought?
I want us to specify the members delegated. So delegate member Borgen and Norris, members Borgen and Norris.
That's a wonderful idea. What I was going to say is if we have the motion up, if we could ensure that if we could have the motion up, please. I believe that we've corrected the language to reflect the proposals. But then if the members could voice over, as General Counsel just stated, the 2 members for the record, please.
So my recommendation for whoever makes the motion, essentially read this slide out loud when you're making the motion. And instead of saying delegate 2 members, say delegate members Borgen and Norris. And the members being delegated can make a motion if they so choose. It's fine.
Sure, I'll move that we identify Member Fong, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Norris.
Thanks. I move that we identify the top 3 proposals and delegate Member Norris and Member Borgen to work offline to draft a report reflecting the ad hoc committee's proposal prioritization and providing an explanation behind the prioritization. The 3 proposals are digital access to learning, student debt at colleges and universities, and weaving disaggregated multilingual learner data. Thank you.
I second that motion.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion and we have a second on the table. We have a very clear motion. Teamwork makes the dream work. So thank you for
It makes
everybody.
my lawyer heart very happy. I was like, that was beautiful. Thank you.
It was, right? I
Yes.
fully agree that you have C2C staff gushing over here. Brilliant. Okay, so with the motion on the table, the second on the table, we'd now like to open it up for public comment. So let's pause here and I will pass it over to Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez to lead us through this section, please.
Yes, we have no commenters here in Sacramento. For members of the public attending via Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment on this agenda item. We have, we have 2 members of the public. Again, I'd like to reiterate, if we have more than 10 folks who would like to comment, speaking time will be limited to 1 minute. So with only 2 folks on the line, it will be 2 minutes. I saw Meredith Curry Nunez, NCCPC, and I will allow her to talk. And allow me to put on the timer real quick.
Am I able to start?
Give me 1 moment, Meredith.
Of course.
And go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. My name is Meredith Curry Nunez with the Northern California College Promise Coalition. Thank you, advisory board members, for your participation in this ad hoc committee. Your leadership is much appreciated. And I also want to thank all of the advisory board members who submitted proposals. I call to offer support for the proposals submitted by Member Fong, including internship and first destination survey data and tracking child savings account data. And I do understand from this conversation they have not been selected for the top 3, so I do hope next year advisory board members will consider sponsoring both of these worthy proposals. I also want to thank members Borgen, Orlick, Owen, and Shack for their strong proposals and agree on the need to track multilingual learners, digital learners, and student debt. And thank you, members Norris and Faust, for your thoughtful contributions. I appreciate everyone for the robust discussion and intentionality you each had to arrive at these top 3 proposals. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Meredith. And then I have Roy Tongilava. Give me 1 moment and I will set up the timer. All right, Roy, you are unmuted.
Malolele, Kohokoinga, Koloy Tangilava. Greetings. Hi, advisory board members. Hi, Mary Kate. Great to see you all and hope you all are enjoying your summer this far. Just really want to echo some of the comments that have been shared and really express gratitude for the robust discussion today. And also share a few shout outs with first, of course, to Californians Together and Shelley and her team for working with my team here at Ettrist West on the multilingual learner proposal. And also want to shout out members Owens and Orlick for co-sponsoring this measure, as well as want to thank each of you on the committee for prioritizing this proposal. I myself was a dual language learner. My parents who immigrated from the Pacific Islands were also dual language learners. And there are just several million students in our school systems and in our workforce who are multilingual. And so just really want to echo that and just also want to appreciate all the work that you are doing and definitely look forward to seeing this work move forward and supporting in any ways that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any other hands raised. I will go ahead and turn it over to Mary Kate Cruz Jones to lead us through the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we have the motion. We have that second. We have the motion slide in front of us as a reminder to members what we're voting on. So I'd love to open it up for a roll call vote. Pass it back over to Stephanie.
Member Borgen,
Aye.
Member Faust,
Aye.
Member Norris,
Aye.
Member Fong.
Aye.
For the clarity of the record, we have 4 ayes.
The motion passes. Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much to members here today. This is unprecedented work, right? Y'all are the first Data and Tools Ad Hoc Committee. This will be the first report written. This was the first deliberations of its kind. So thank you very much. And again, thank you to all the public folks that participated here today during public comment and then did provide public proposals. So the next thing we're gonna just walk through is we are wrapping up the meeting here today, but let's move to the next agenda item, which will look like general public comment. So I'm happy to pass it back over to Stephanie to walk us through general public comment. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped myself on the agenda. I will actually review the next steps of the proposal process, and then we'll go through general public comment. So, yes, wonderful. Let's take a look at the next slide. I thought I had already done my work, but reminding myself. Okay, so this is what had come up a little bit. We could just review it. Thank you, members Norris, members Borgen, for offering to write that report here. You two will be the two members that will meet offline to draft this report. And what's showcased in this image is, you know, that draft or that outline that we've given you. The office, will be happy to provide a transcript of today's meeting to help you write that report. And then ideally we'll have that report back from the two of you on August 12th. And then just as a reminder, the content of the report will be based on things that were said here today in the meeting. So that's why it was so important. And I asked to get things on record so that you can share that in the report with your fellow members. Okay. If there's no questions or comments here, but I can ask, we can then move on to general public comment. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So Stephanie Gutierrez-Valdez, please walk us through general public comment.
Yes, this section is reserved for general public comment. At this time, we will open it up again to members of the public for general public comment. So there are no commenters here in Sacramento. So we're going to go ahead and move to Zoom. For members of the public attending via Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment on this agenda item. I'm going to go ahead and give it a minute. Okay, at this time, we have no hands raised. I will go ahead and hand it over to Mary Kate Cruz-Jones to lead us through the remaining of the agenda.
Fabulous. All right, so future agenda items, members know the drill. This is the point where you can ask for anything that you want to see at your next meeting. As a reminder, that meeting will take place on August 20th. And I'm happy to start with members before we open it up to the public. Hearing nothing. Fabulous. Let's see if there's any public comment on this agenda item. Stephanie, please.
Yes, we have no commenters here in Sacramento, so we're going to go ahead and move to Zoom. For members of the public attending via Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment on this agenda item, and I will give it a moment or two. Seeing none, I will go ahead and turn it back to Mary Kate Cruz-Jones.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so we've hit it. It's the last agenda item, adjournment. So just some concluding remarks here. I want to thank everyone that's been with us today, specifically our 4 members of this ad hoc committee, C2C team, right? We worked through, again, uncharted territories together. And I feel like we all did it with grace. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts, deliberations, as well as the public input, right? So thank you very much. Our achievements are a result of our collective collaboration, and your ongoing support has been invaluable. So as we've said several times now, our next public ad hoc committee meeting will happen on Tuesday, August 20th. The meeting will be a hybrid meeting. So again, we'll offer this location here in Sacramento. Members will be participating remotely. Members of the public will have the opportunity again to join these meetings as they do always. And we'll have more information forthcoming on the C2C website. And the main thing that will happen in this meeting is the review of that report and I'll just say it again, shout out to members Norris and Borgen for so graciously offering to write that report. It will be a review and ideally approval of that. If folks from this committee or our public are interested, also want to advertise that our community engagement ad hoc committee meeting will take place 2 days later. That will be their first meeting and that will happen on Thursday, August 22nd. So I'd love to adjourn the meeting early. Not only did we do a lot of work, we're ending it early. So at 1:38, I'll call this meeting to a close. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day and happy Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye,
so
y'all.
much.
Thank you.